Hello, Dot.
Hello.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me back.
You came on, I think it must be 2 years ago. It's
Easy,
a while.
Yeah, I was trying to think. It was probably the same time 2 years ago. It was definitely a holiday.
Yeah, I think it was. So thank you very much for coming back. Do you want to give everybody a quick introduction, an overview of who Dot is?
Who Dot is? Dot is, we lived in what is currently now Angie's new home. We used to live in the cottage. And that's how we got to know lovely Angie and Dave, and came back from Dubai after about 13 and a half years with her husband and kids. And I now work as an English assistant at USexy Middle School. And I've got Ethan in GCSEs and Adam in Year 9.
Wow.
I know, they've aged a bit since we've grown.
And they're huge.
They're now taller than Angie and me.
Everybody's taller than me.
Yeah,
they're
it's not
taller
hard.
than me, actually.
Really?
How tall are you?
I know I'm 1.64 meters. I don't know.
That's about 5'9", I
Probably,
think.
yeah. Put me on the upper end of the
We can do
Yeah,
that.
but yesterday we were speaking to my mother and stood next to one another, and they're able to just like rest up on my shoulders now.
Wow.
Mind you, I think they've been doing that for me since I've known them.
Well, I think maybe they were just on your height when
Yeah,
you met them,
yeah.
isn't it?
It's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. I remember when James died, sorry to start with that, but when James died, the funeral director, I'm sure I've said this before, rang me and he went, Ange, yeah, you could have warned me. I went, what? He said, how the hell did you produce a 6'4" child?
It's-
Did you not realise that? Because he'd never met James. I
James,
mean,
yeah.
he knows the rest of the family, but he'd never actually met James.
yeah,
And I said, I don't know how it happened.
it's
but
like the acorn gave birth to the tree.
I am tiny compared to even Victoria's quite tall. I mean, Will's isn't that tall. He's only 5 foot. Bless him. How tall are you?
About 5'11", 5'11" on a good day.
See, me and English measurements, I'm still in the meters and centimeters school.
When you went, sorry, I'm just intrigued about this. This question's going on in my head. So when you went to Dubai,
Yeah.
you were married with Ian.
I was married with Ian, and I was 16 weeks pregnant with Ethan.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
And how long had you been married to Ian before?
10 years. Oh, going on for 10
wow.
years. Yeah, so Ethan was born, and 2 weeks later was our 10th anniversary.
So why didn't you have kids before?
I went into my marriage not wanting kids. I didn't understand why people had them.
That's very honest. That's fair.
You know, oh no.
Do you still feel the same?
Sometimes it's that I do get challenged enough to think, why did I do this?
What changed your mind?
I remember my gran was sick, and we were living up in Edinburgh, or Glasgow at the time. And my gran was sick, and we had flown down for the weekend. I think, had she passed away, it was her funeral weekend. It was somewhere around that. But Ian and I were together in Gatwick Airport, and there was this wee kid that walked by his mom, and he was smiling, and it's this biological clock just came and whacked me in the side of the face. I just burst into tears, and I said, I think I want a baby. And that was, we were 6.5 years married then. And even Ian was like, what? You know, speechless, because for all that time, I didn't want children. It was, and I blame that wee kid in Gatwick Airport, yeah. And maybe it was just timing, you know, that loss and things like that, that kind of apparently can have an effect on some people. I'm too stubborn-minded to say that that is the case. Yeah. And he was a
Did
sweet
Ian
little
want
kid.
kids?
Yes, but he kind of wasn't pushing the fact. So he was quite happy to get married knowing I didn't want any.
Yeah.
So, you know, we went into the marriage totally, you know. However, I had a name chosen.
And what was the name? Oh, it was.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've watched a movie with Anthony Hopkins called Instinct. And he's a Dr. Ethan something, and he does research on gorillas and things like that. And I won't give the movie away because it's a must watch. It's one of those top bucket list movies. And yeah, and I said to Ian, if I fall pregnant by accident, it has to be a boy, and it's going to be called Ethan. And he went, okay. And,
You have no choice over
but he
this.
didn't have a choice. And this was probably about, 14 years before we had Ethan. And of course, I never saw Ethan for the first 24 hours because I was, you know, tied up to tubes and things like that. And I said to Ian, I said, does he look like an Ethan? And Ian went, I don't know what an Ethan's meant to look like.
So why were you tied up on tubes and stuff?
I had preeclampsia, and we went in for a routine checkup. The following week, Ethan was going to be born, so I said, right, we'll go for a checkup, and we will discuss birthing plans, all that kind of nonsense with the doctor. And my blood pressure had dropped into my boots, literally. And when they did the ECG or whatever they put on the baby, they said, right, every time you're contracting, the baby's heart is dipping. His heart rate's dipping. He's not going to survive natural. We're taking him out in half an hour. And half an hour later, there he was in ICU. And I was also tied up to tubes and things like that for the preeclampsia.
And how old was he when he was born in pregnancy terms?
We reckon he should have been born earlier, because between in Dubai, in the last month of your pregnancy, you go for a checkup every week. And the week before, they said, right, nice small baby, easy birth, not a problem with this one. And a week later, with the measurements, they can say the baby's more or less this weight. And in that week, the following week, he had lost 1 kilo in the womb.
Wow.
Yeah, because his body fats naturally start feeding the essential organs, which is, I mean, it's a miracle, really, how the body works and how the design and makeup works. It's a miracle. So he was already surviving.
Himself. Because most babies, they lose weight, don't they, within the first couple of weeks?
That's right, yes. So, of course, he was a 1.9 kilo baby, which I think is about 4.4 pounds, somebody told me. Then, of course, like you say, naturally they lose the weight. So he was like a little baked potato with toothpicks stuck in.
Oh,
and he's huge now.
And now, nobody believes me when I say, well, that's how he started. Yeah.
So why did you go on and have another one?
I could see he wasn't going to be good on his own company for some reason. I thought, again, in the first year, this is the only child, I'm not having another one, kind of thing. But when he was more social, I could see,
he needed a sibling.
He needed a company. I think he's saying, why did you even do that? And Adam's saying, why wasn't I born first? Typical second child sin. But,
So why did it take you 4.5 years to have a pregnancy, or could you not fall? Or
I think we were so, I don't know, planning probably wasn't very good. And then it was a case of, we thought, maybe we've got a problem. And I said, we knew we were going to Dubai. And I said, well, let's get to Dubai, wait a while. And if nothing happens, we'll go and see a doctor. And then, lo and behold, I fell pregnant. Even in Glasgow.
And was it quicker with Adam?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you do it again?
As in...
If you had your life again, would you have your kids again?
I don't know.
Please, boys, if you watch this, I apologise for this answer, okay?
Yes, I probably would. Maybe, if I'm perfectly honest, maybe not, but I'd need to know what I know now.
Yeah.
Which you don't know. You're not meant to know what tomorrow brings. So, I probably would have done the same again.
I'm not sure. I mean, bearing in mind, obviously, knowing what we've been through and knowing what I went through, like divorce and various other bits and pieces, I don't think I would have had kids.
Yeah.
Partly because it's just so, I mean, it's not something to do lightly. I think it's very easy for people to go, I'm having a baby. I get married, I'll get in a relationship, and then I'm going to have a baby. Yeah. And it's like, I'm sorry, it's the hardest job in the world. It's the
hardest job. And your heart...
And it doesn't stop.
Literally lives outside your body for the rest of your life, when you have kids. And I remember friends of ours, they fell pregnant with their first baby, and I just had Adam. And, I'm the school of suck it up, buttercup, and I'm very honest. Sometimes there's no speed bump between what's in my head and what comes out of my mouth. And I was telling this friend, I said, if you think it's going to be butterflies coming out of flowers in the field when this baby is born and you're going to bond with it on the first time you set eyes on it, don't. It's not going to happen. You're going into a deep, dark hole. I said, but you will come out of it. but trust me, it's not going to be easy. And when I met her when her baby was 6 weeks old, she said, I'm so glad you told me what it was like, because she said, had she not had that voice in her head saying it will be okay, she probably would have admitted herself to hospital because she would have thought something was wrong with her.
But so many particularly mums say that, and people don't realise it's boring the first year of a baby. And I don't mean that it's boring having the baby and the baby's boring. It's just you're not as busy as you thought you were going to be.
No.
And they don't do a lot.
No.
They poo, they wee, they demand food, they cry. You've got to wash them and do their washing, and they have more washing than you've ever had in the whole of your life, and all in a week.
And they say the way the baby cries, you know exactly what it wants. It needs feeding and this and that. What utter rubbish is that? I'm sorry. That person's never had a child. You know, I remember watching, before we had kids, I remember watching this one mom, and they were talking about McDonald's and feeding children McDonald's meals and things like that. And this one mom said, potatoes are vegetables. If it eats the fries, it's eating a vegetable. And I went, I'll never do that to my child. Well, now, hey, I am so in that mom's camp. She's my hero.
It is like that, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know Victoria spends her time disguising vegetables in sauces for her boys. And I say, you got to give me that. I mean, I used to do it with my kids as well, because they put a vegetable in front of them. A lot of the time, they wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
William was the worst, and yet now he will eat. He still doesn't eat as many vegetables as I would, but he's he's all right. But you spend your whole life, really, don't you, trying to get things right with them. I just had a text from William saying, please do not pay for my chiropractor. And I said, and Dave, we were podcasting, so I couldn't say anything. So I texted back and I said, Dave said, it wasn't me, it was your mum. And I went, yeah, and it's a parent's prerogative, thank you, and left it at that. And he said thank you, but it's like, that's what we do as parents. Yeah. So you learn how to disguise vegetables. You learn how to you just do it.
And I mean, even now, Ethan, you know, on Boxing Day, he had the seizure on the res, totally out of the blue, because he had juvenile epilepsy, came off medication, was seizure-free for a good 5 years. Yes. Was off the medication for close to 3, and it was just out of the blue this happened. And where was I going with this? Oh yeah, now we're doing this, what the NHS call the Ready Steady Go, transitioning from a child care into the adult care. So that takes, the whole process can take about 2 years, you know, with all the paperwork and getting the child almost trained up to be able to make the appointment for themselves and things like that. That's why they do the Ready Steady Go. So we had the Ready meeting on Wednesday morning online, last week Wednesday, and then the Steady is getting the system into place, getting the adult care doctors in place, and then the Go is, well, now Ethan's.
So what age do they do that for?
From 16 to 18. Yes, so about 18. He should know how to go and get himself a repeat prescription, make an appointment with the doctor and things like that.
Because when I worked in mental health, that was one of the things that was always a bit of it was really sad because it was a very grey area.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit like you go from child services into adult services, and the transition was never smooth. And very often people got lost in the river of mess.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear that they do that in services now.
Yeah.
Because they certainly didn't.
Yeah.
But we do transition at the rehab. So if we notice a lot of places don't do transition.
Yeah.
And we notice the value of transition in the sense of getting people from residential care back into community,
right? Okay.
Living, working, being independent, and being able to do that without having to feel that they are they don't know what they're doing. You know, we prep them for that. Yeah. It's like having a horse. You know, I do loads of transition work with the horses from different. It sounds silly, but from walk to canter, walk to trot, trot to walk, and stuff like that. Because to get and to stop and things like that, to get their muscles and everything ready and to get them to know what they need to do.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's exactly the same, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like walking the puppy, isn't it? At 6 weeks, 8 weeks, they leave mom, and then for the first 6 months, they can't go on more than a 10-minute walk, that kind of thing. So it is, As a parent, I've always said, if my children can't do something, that's my failure as a parent, because I've not trained them in that. So, for instance, if they can't crack an egg, that's my fault, because maybe I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't like the mess and things, but how else do we learn? We have to make those messes. We have to make those mistakes, and the only reason I think Ethan can make an omelette confidently is because I said, right, I'm going to show you the step by step, and then tomorrow I'll watch you do the step by step, and then I'm going to leave the kitchen. So now, if he wants to make an omelette, all I need to make sure of is there's eggs in the fridge.
Yeah.
That's my job.
But also, is that bit about the transition bit is about also asking for help, because that bit, Mom's taught me how to do all of that, but now I don't, I've forgotten that stage or whatever. And having the capacity and the ability, the confidence to say, need help. Can I step in? Because I think that's what a lot of people don't do. They don't ask for help. And so therefore they end up in that position of sadness or a position of not going any further. They don't do anything. I took a young lady out yesterday. I didn't feel very well, to be honest, but she's having a problem with her horse. And I said, I'll come out with you. So I took her out with her horse and I was on my horse. And, just went through different stages just to kind of make her confident. But she asked for help, and I was really pleased that she had asked for help. I felt quite honoured that she'd asked for help.
That's right, yeah.
And to be able to give that help unconditionally, really, it was just nice to be able to do that for another.
I mean, I see it at the school, I don't take any nonsense from the kids.
Really? Are you surprised by that?
No, not at all.
If I get a group for the first time, I say, right, these are my rules at the table, kind of thing. I will help you till I can't help you anymore. But as soon as you start mocking each other, or you dissing one another, or you don't listen to me, you're out. There's no second chances at the table, because there's somebody else in that classroom that needs the seat.
Yeah.
And if you look at the children that need that help, it's big. It's big, because we've got the COVID, what they call the COVID kids now. We've got them in year 5, and they need a lot of kind of support in every aspect, really. Handwriting, reading, confidence, be able to speak.
Is it really that noticeable?
Yes and no. There's some kids that are just, they should be more in year 7 than in year 5 because parents are really hands-on. Yeah. And then you've got the others that, they're lucky to make it into school.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
It's very sad. It's very sad.
As a child, for me, I was kept out of school. So, and then when I was a teenager, I didn't go to school. I mean, I wasn't educated at all. And I came out of school with no exams, nothing at all. And I had to re-educate myself. I mean, I've done all right on my own type thing, but it's so tough. I mean, fortunately I was bright, so I can do that. But I mean, there's lots of kids out there that you need as a parent. And that's, coming back to a parent role. Yeah. You need your parents to sit down with you with a book. And if you can't read as a parent, because Dave is badly dyslexic and reading is not what he does comfortably, but he would sit down with the kids and read the book, and he'd work it out for himself and sit with the kids and read. Every single night he would read to them, or they would read to him as well, and vice versa. Yeah. And it was just because he knew when he was at school that he didn't get that kind of support.
Yeah. And the thing is, I noticed it in one of our library sessions, one of the teachers was reading to a kid, year 5 kid. And this kid can't sit still for even if you paid him, And when the teacher was reading to him, we were all kind of, wow, he's actually sitting still and he's engrossed in what the teacher has to say or read. And it was quite, apart from humbling, it's quite emotional sometimes to notice that and see it, because it's not their fault. you know. And a lot of kids, strangely enough, want to work with me because they know they get results. And I've kind of been pushed into the 7 and 8 group because I don't let them get away with nonsense, you know. And I think that comes back to disciplining. We're too scared to discipline as well. And I don't think we should be. I think we can't go bashing kids about, that's not what I'm saying. I think we should have a line and say, right, this is the consequence. This is how we're going to follow through with the consequence. And sometimes you'll have the parents saying, well, Billy Bob can't do after school detention because Billy Bob's on a bus and I work till 5. Okay, there's a solution to that. We've got after school care till 6 o'clock. After Billy Bob's detention, he can go into after school care and you can pick him up then. It'll take 2-3 times. Billy Bob won't be an ass again in the class, you know, because he's getting it from both ends.
Yeah.
So, but we don't do that particularly, and I think as well at other schools as well, because they found that the kids missing their social time has a greater impact on the consequence than if we kept them after school. Yes, for some it works. For some it doesn't.
But where does that? Did you ever get detention or anything like that?
Not what I remember, no.
I can't imagine. I don't think I ever did either. I don't like breaking rules. I've broken loads of rules, but privately I've done it. But I do feel discipline is so vital. When you do it in the rehab, you get disciplined. You will be disciplined.
Yeah.
You know, if you do something that you're not supposed to do, you'll get a warning. And that warning is that. And then you get 3 verbal warnings, a written warning, a final written warning, and then you're discharged from the service. You are effectively taking responsibility for your own actions. And if you don't, then you've got to leave.
Yeah. That's why I had a group, funny enough, one day I had a group of year 8s, and it was quite funny because they were working well and they was chatty. And I said, right, I'll make you guys a deal. You work quietly for 20 minutes. I'll come around and help you where I need to. I said, but 20 minutes. Got my timer on. And then after that, if you're far enough, you can have 5 minutes chat. Right? I think it's a fair deal. Yeah, no, that's fine. Anyway, they work first 10 minutes or so. And then it's like, oh, this one said that about me. This one said this about me. And then, of course, it starts snowballing throughout the 8 kids in the classroom. And I went, right, everybody put your pens down. Just listen to me. People are going to say things about you that you're not going to like. It's called adulthood. And just, well, grow some thick skin, become Teflon, let it wash off, you know, and don't let it bother you. It's not worth losing the sleep over. And they just like stared at me. They'd never heard that kind of, well, this is the way life is, kids, you know, type of thing. And they just went, right, work. And I got work out of it.
But I think that's that boundary stuff again, isn't it? Because people find it, I will let somebody go if they cross that boundary. If it's got to a final written warning and they do it again and they're a repeat offender of whatever it can be anything. I'm sorry, it's time for you to leave.
Yeah.
They'll go, are you serious that you're going to discharge me on that? No, you've discharged yourself on that.
Yeah.
It's responsibility, and we have boundaries and we have to protect everybody else and treat everybody equally.
Yeah.
And that is part of treating you equally as well.
That's right, yeah.
You know, if you want to go on if you go on a therapeutic and come back in a week's time, and then you can reflect on whether or not you want to do the changes that you need to do, then fair comment.
Yeah.
But, you know, and people are so shocked. But boundaries work.
Yeah, definitely.
And not just like, that's my boundary. That is establishing your own boundaries, isn't it? You know, I'm not going to do that. Like, I don't gossip about people.
Yeah.
I'm not a gossiper. I'll talk about my experience with somebody, but I'm not going to, Dot said this about Mike, and Mike, did you know that? Then I'm not going to do that. I'm not that kind of person. Gossip.
No, not particularly.
You've ever gossip? Do you gossip?
I have my moments, I must admit. I put my hands up to it. I do like a bit of a natter. But if I've come to the conclusion, if it's not going to be helpful, kind, or necessary, is it worth talking about it? Am I part of the solution or am I part of the problem? I'd rather be part of the solution, to be perfectly honest. Look, I have moans about people. Yeah, why not? Because I do. I moan about family. I moan about people I work with. I'm sure they moan about me. But again, that's where it comes into the thing that not everybody has to get on. Not everybody is going to get on. It's a case of, right, you know what? I work with you. You do your job. I'll do mine. And I'll get my instructions from a teacher. Maybe I don't get on with, I get on with most of the teacher. I get on with most people. But I won't cause problems that will kind of lose them their clout, as it were, you know, so they won't lose respect via what I say to anybody. I won't go and say something that they're going to lose respect from, say, the kids. So, you know, for argument's sake, I'll never do that. Even with my husband, it's like if we argue, it's not in front of the kids, because then they know, you know, we can play this one up against that one and this way and that way. And so I just don't argue with Ian in front of the kids.
Well, I'm going to give you a bit of a tip there, okay? I don't know if Mike's ever heard this, though. Dave and I never, ever argued in front of the children. And then on the day when it occurred, and it wasn't horrible, you know, it was just like we had a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
William, in fact, all three of them thought we were going to get divorced and we were going to leave. So we decided we'd almost fake it so that they got used to it. So they kind of used to it. But I think because we don't argue often, it's very rare that we have crosswords. So if one of us is grumpy with the other one, the kids kind of you can see it. I can see it in them. They get a bit like nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're just, and it's like, it's normal to have crosswords with somebody that you live with 24 hours a day, really. Yeah. But it's like, you know, because it's so unusual, and we're not like the Coronation Street, we're not on there screaming and shouting at each other, you know, but the kids still get nervous. You can see it. I can absolutely see it.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, I kind of also, I'm not very good at resolution because my dad was always a peacemaker. And, you know, my mom would lose it with my dad. And my dad would just be the Teflon. And he would never say a cross word about my mom. Never. And yeah, and I think maybe as a result, like you say, you know, I never learned how to resolve things. I'm a bit of I don't like confrontation. I won't do it. So yeah, if there's an argument, I just like go. And then I'll keep quiet for maybe a day. And then I'll say, well, okay, I'm sorry. But I try and avoid but, because if you put in the but, you're not really sorry. You just want to get that last, you know.
Or you might have a valid point.
I might have a valid point. So I'll kind of start a new sentence. Maybe if this worked that way, you know, that kind of thing. So I should really maybe not pick arguments, but just teach the boys to resolve. And somebody told me the once that somebody had told her as an only child, he had never learned how to resolve arguments. So he said when he sees two brothers, for instance, having a little banter and an argument, let them argue it out, because that's how they're going to sort their nonsense out. You know, instead of the parents intercepting, just let them argue it out. So sometimes I do that with the boys because, one, I've already tried to get them to agree and see it from both sides. However, I think now I've lost the energy and they're just listening to white noise if I come into the room. So I don't actually get involved anymore sometimes.
I know that with the little boys, when they come over and they start arguing, and it happened the other day actually, they were over there, they were stood by the garage and they were arguing about who was going to go first on the ride. But it was like, and I just shouted over, just be kind to each other, please.
Yeah.
Argue yourself away, but be kind to each other, please. And then it went on. And it went on, and you could feel the like anger was getting, and there was aggression there. So I went over and said, "Well, neither of you are going to go and have a ride, and actually, you can take your helmets off, and you can have 5 minutes time out until you can be kind to each other." And it was like it was like World War III. You would have thought that I mean. Freddie was brilliant. He just wandered off and just took. I think he reflected. Yeah. Bertie got really grumpy, and Victoria had to deal with it in here with Will. And I was just laughing. It was just like, well, And I said, well, it's called life, isn't
Yeah.
it? You can't stand in the street screaming at each other and being nasty to each other. It's not normal.
No, it isn't. But sometimes you see that and you just think, what's going to happen? Should we hide behind a tree and just have a wee look? See how this unfolds.
I think, if you look at the community, though, there's lots of people avoid conflict, don't they? Or they avoid challenging conflict or people's negative behaviour. I mean, in school, you have to deal with it, don't you, on a day-to-day basis? Yeah. But it's like, there's somebody in the street being unkind to somebody. Do you intervene or do you ignore it?
Yeah, this is it. It is, at what point do you intervene? Is it a kind of protection thing? Is it helping somebody in need? It is a tough one, but I would like to think that I would help. Now, I've never been in that predicament where I've had to actually drop my own bags to go and save somebody. However, I would hope that that's how I would respond.
Yeah, I've actually been there. There were a couple of times actually, where I've seen people arguing, and I've said, "Are you all right?" To the one that's kind of less of the aggressor, as it were. And it's amazing how it diffuses the situation when they realise that the public are watching them or seeing them. And a couple of times I can think of examples.
I think very often we forget we have an audience, even if that audience isn't necessarily visible. We have an audience, and the audience is often the person you're arguing with, or indeed it might be a stranger.
Yeah.
Is that the impression that you want to give people, and is that the kind of person you want to be?
Yeah.
I know a couple of weeks ago we were moving and emotionally really struggling, packing things away and stuff like that. And it was quite, and I was really, I was emotionally struggling. I know I was. And the situation occurred and I was very, very, somebody had kept messing us about or kept messing Dave about. And it was, when you watch somebody being treated not as nicely as they could do, and somebody is not following through with what they're supposed to do. And they kept fobbing off. And in the end, I just got grumpy about it. And I just lose my temper. But I thought, no, I'm going to say to them, you said this, and now it's this. And, you can't do that. You said you were going to do this by this date. Yeah. And now it's like 2 weeks on and it's still not completed and it's not okay. And the person came back saying, I've never been spoken to like that. I know that that's not true because I'm sure I'm not the only person you've ever let down. But anyway, so that was that. And but I felt that in a sense, the way I was feeling, I was hypersensitive, and I felt that I kind of pushed that hypersensitivity onto Dave. And he's sensitive as well because we're both going through the same thing. It's not like it's just me that's going through that. He's going through it too. And I felt really bad. Really awful because I'm not often like that.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I remember getting in the car, we got in the car to go somewhere and I went, I'm really, really sorry. And he said, you don't need to be sorry, you're okay. Yeah. I felt I needed to be sorry. And I think it stayed there for about 48 hours where I could feel that a level of shame about my behaviour that I thought, and in the real world, it's probably no big deal.
Yeah.
People are like that all the time, but I'm not like that.
Not like that,
so when it does come up, it's like, oh my gosh, how could I have been so grumpy?
Yeah. I mean, even I sometimes reflect and I think, could I have handled the situation differently? Could I have reprimanded that child differently? Mm-hmm. Could I have handled my own child differently? That kind of thing. It does. Sometimes people can live rent-free in my head and I don't like that. And I think maybe then that's where I tend to reflect and I think I maybe should have handled it differently. Not could have, I should have. That kind of thing. But then I think it's kind of a joy to have those things because you learn and for the next time, should the same scenario arise, what works, what doesn't work, and you handle it differently. And I think that's how we mature. I don't think we ever stop maturing. We just grow through experience all the time.
If you're open to it.
If you're open to it, yes. So sometimes we just should be. We should be willing to learn.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
It is.
So do you deal with other people's kids in the sense of I mean, I think when you're dealing with helping people change, like you do at school, because it's part of change, isn't it? Educating young people is change, isn't it? How do you deal with that bit where it always, all these things, and I know for myself and my own career, that comes up with conflict. People will always criticize you. You're never going to get it right all the time.
No.
So how do you handle that in your work? And how does it impact on your mental health as well?
Well, the thing is, we're very focused on children's mental health. And I think, that's great because we need to be. But it's, again, you think, how do you worry about I think we should start worrying about the teacher's mental health as well. But now, how do I handle other children and kind of help with that change? I'm very real with them. I'm very honest with them. And I think, I don't treat them any differently to how I treat my own children. And some of them say, oh, you're very strict. And I'm saying, yeah, and I'm the same at home. I will never treat you any differently to how I treat my own child. And the thing is, I think you're a bit more patient with other people's children because they're not yours. You can't let that guard down. Whereas with your own children, they know who you are. They've seen probably your bad bits, as it were. So kind of let that go. But with other people's children, you kind of have to be a bit more patient, tolerant of them. However, not let it slip and let them just do what they want. It's I kind of try and say to them, try and have some self-pride. No, have some pride in yourself. There's only one of you. And, like for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I was looking through this kid's book and all he's done this whole year is written the date. Every time he goes into class, it's like, it's almost like he's got an unused book. And I went, this is not good. You will struggle. You have 2 terms left to pull yourself together and deliver the work that I think you're capable of. Pull yourself towards yourself and get some self-pride and see where it gets you. You may surprise yourself. And it's helping them build that confidence because a lot of them don't want to lose the street credit in front of the other mate. So I kind of go to the teacher, right, send this kid on his own to the library where I can work with him one-to-one because I know he can deliver or she can deliver. Then, and the work they do deliver, they're very clever. It's just they don't want to lose that street credit, which is more frustrating for me than them not doing the work.
Yeah. It's sad though.
It's sad.
You never had street cred.
No.
It's a tough one though, again, isn't it? Because I never really cared about what other people thought about me. It's not something that's really in my world, but people do impact on me emotionally. I can man it up and I can work through the process of it, but I still think it's hard when you're under pressure. I want to just come back briefly to that bit about mental health and that fact that actually, yes, we do worry about young people's mental health. A lot of that is around social media and all that rubbish that they're allowed to watch. But also, I think the adults' mental health is just as important as the children. I was reading something, I can't remember what it was. I know what the content was, and the content was that was it. There was an MP that has criticised counselling and said that counsellors are diagnosing people with mental health. A counsellor doesn't diagnose anybody. They're not qualified to diagnose anybody. They're only qualified to provide a service in which can allow people to change if they want to. Yeah. And it's a safe and confidential environment. And there's been all this talk on LinkedIn and all these other social medias, and I read a couple of the things that people said, and I just thought, do you know what? That's his opinion. That is his opinion. And actually, there might be people out there that are doing that, and he might have a point. And actually, this might make people pull their socks up and stop doing it, because I know that I've seen people that have said, my last counsellor, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, who the hell do they think they are to be able to do that? I'm not arrogant enough to think that I could do it. So how do you think? And so I think to a certain degree, there is that bit where we all have challenges with our mental health, it doesn't mean to say we have a mental health problem.
No.
It just means that actually something's come along and stretched our minds a bit more. And I think we do have to watch that we're not labelling children, adults, whatever, with a mental health problem.
Yeah, and it's very easy to kind of say, okay, we're putting you in that box.
Yeah, you're in a category.
And you're now in a category. I like to break those barriers. Yeah, okay, maybe you are dyslexic. We can work with, this is what we can provide you with. And it's simple fixes. Like, I mean, sometimes I read with kids and I'm going, when did you last have an eye test?
Yeah.
Never had one. Okay, I'm going to get the teacher to email your parent. And I don't know, I'm not, like you say, I'm not qualified, but you can see when kids are leaning backwards and forwards, they probably need an eye test. It's not rocket science either.
It's just world life experience. It's pretty obvious stuff, like you say.
Yeah, and, things like that. And then sometimes we have these overlays and they color different colors of sheets. And you can see a kid struggling and I'm going, okay, you wear the glasses. Currently you've had a dyslexia screening and there's nothing that's come through. Let's just put this sheet on the paper for you and a whole new world opens up.
Wow.
And it takes him from reluctant reading to probably a bit more passionate because it's comfortable. And it's just like those simple fixes. And that's that. It's almost like when I say that box is ticked, we've helped that person.
It's step in the direction, isn't it? And it's unlabeling them, really, isn't it?
Them because, funny enough, most kids don't want to be labelled.
Well, no, most adults don't want to be labelled.
Most adults don't want to be. But then there's some that's going, oh, no, I'm getting this screening, that screening, this screening, that screening. And I'm going, is that your get out of jail free card? I don't have to do work. And I went, I can always scribe for you. Yeah, you tell me what I must write. And then that's how I get them to work as well, because they must tell me what they want to write. So then I kind of blow a bit of smoke up their backside a bit and I say, right, you are my boss. You must tell me what you want me to write. And they go, what, I'm in charge? I say, yeah, but keep it real. I will pull you up if I think it's going a bit too lad. And and then, we sit and we work together and, there's nothing better than at the end of a lesson, a kid saying thank you to me more than once. They say thank you. And then they go, when they deliver their book and they walk out of the classroom and say, thank you so much, Mrs. I've done it. I've got to that kid. I've made him just stand up a bit taller or her.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, it is a great feeling. That's probably why I enjoy the job, because you can make a difference. Even if it's one person, you've made a difference.
But isn't that about life? It's just about making a difference in society. Yeah. I'm just aware of time, and we've probably kept you for long enough. And you've got 2 boys at home.
Well, I think they say it's their dad. That's probably not.
Oh, yeah. And Ian's there.
Thanks so much for coming on again, Dot. It's been great.
Thank you very much for having me.
See you again soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you going to come back?
Maybe next Easter.